Welcome to the Here We Go podcast, a place to share your experiences in football programs that players have loved regardless of record or on-the-field accolades. I'm Tom Letson with my co-host, Greg LaCava. Coach LaCava, how are we doing today?
Hey, Coach Letson, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going great, and I'm real happy to be here this is our first official episode of the Here We Go podcast after our initial intro episode. And episode 1 is going to be an extremely exciting for me, and I know for you as well, episode because of our special guest. Okay, and our special guest is Mr. Chris Bova. And Chris Bova has a long history with us. And before we came on today, we just said a couple of things, and I think I used the word that I like, and before I introduce him here, and it's a thread. And with Coach Bova, okay, beginning with us at Middletown South, with you as a player, you were a senior, and he was a sophomore, and it was my first year coaching, and that thread began there, okay, and all the way up to the present. Through his playing days and coaching days with us at multiple stops. Okay, but before I introduce him, I want to share my screen, okay, because I have something special that I want to share, and I hope Coach Bova doesn't mind, okay? So I have a letter from Coach Bova, okay, that he sent me in his freshman year at college, okay, after his experience at Middletown South. And this is dated December 5th, 1989. 90.
90.
Okay, 90. Okay, and, I had, Coach Bova, we'll get into it. It was a very special player for me. And we had a good relationship. But like most coaches, I would not have known that he felt this way about me unless he told me, And, thank goodness that he told me, because he's become one of my best friends and a valuable coach. And, I don't want to embarrass him here or anything, but I want to read at least the first paragraph of this. And Coach Bova wrote this after he attended the 1990 state final, and watched us stop Trenton Central in the fourth quarter, hanging on to a 15-14 lead and stopping them 4 times from the 5-yard line, okay, on a tremendous goal line stand. A year after, we had a similar goal line stand, not as dramatic, but a similar goal line stand during our first state championship game against Old Bridge, where Coach Bova, executing to perfection, a change that I had put in to a formation that Madison Central ran on the goal line, and they tried to run it on 4th and 2 from the 2-yard line, and he recognized it. Me screaming my head off might have helped a little, and and he was able to fill the C gap, take out 2 blockers from the power I, and single-handedly make the freaking tackle. Okay, the way we drew it up to stop them, we won that game 21-3. I don't know if that was in the 4th or 3rd quarter. It's probably the 4th quarter, but it definitely just put the nail in the coffin for any hopes that they had that they could squeak back in that game, which they could not. So before I introduce Coach here and have him say hello, I just want to read to the audience. And Coach Bova, his handwriting was pretty good. Much better after I put it on this PDF. I could read it. So again, Coach Letson, I've been wanting to write this letter for a long time, but I wanted to wait until the time was right. I went to the Trenton game and saw the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It brought tears to my eyes with all the fanfare and newspaper coverage praising everyone. I think they missed one vital ingredient, you. I don't even think you realize how influential you are to your players. They would tackle a truck for you. To ask them to play with heart is like swinging two bats before you step up to the plate. Once you were there, it feels a lot lighter. Hell, all you asked was to tackle a guy when they would have tackled an oncoming train for you. A day doesn't go by when I don't think about my football experience, most specifically the honor of being coached by you. You are about as inspiring as anyone I've ever met. My parents waited at the end of the game to see the celebration. They waited as I patiently uh, waited along the sidelines. They knew what I was going to do and who I was going to see. Okay. Uh, Not Stephen Michael Pitts, our Division I player that went to Penn State, not even Coach G, our head coach at the time. They knew who I wanted to see, the most amazing person I've ever met, Coach Tom Letson. I just wanted to let you know how important you are to me. Keep in touch. And then our Marine Corps, Semper Fi, Coach Bova, number 5, class of 90. That's one of the most special things that I've ever received in my life. And I don't know if Coach Bova ever thought that I saved that, but here's the envelope. Okay, I did save that, and this is why we coach. And this is This is what I call $1 million. And I'm a therapist, and this might sound a little bit morbid, but when I talk to people, I'm like, when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to think about your bank account. This is the type of stuff that you're going to think about. Okay. And I want to thank Coach Bova, and I want to welcome him. Coach Bova, welcome. I hope I didn't take you too much by surprise.
Well, yeah, I did not see that one coming. I was anticipating a throwback picture, some embarrassing thing of me missing a tackle, but I did not. I remember writing that letter like it was yesterday. I don't write letters anymore. We live in an email world. There's
True.
something there's something really nostalgic about seeing my handwriting like that. I'm usually scribbling on essays now. Um, wow, yeah, thank you so much. It's so great to be here. My two
Yeah.
favorite people in the world.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, man. So I did this introduction and what you've meant to me. Okay, from the beginning, coaching you at Middletown South, an outside linebacker, obviously one of the best outside linebackers, if not the best that I ever coached. And I've coached a lot of really good ones. Coach LaCava knows. Start wherever you'd like. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm at the tail end of my career. I am a high school history teacher. I am currently the golf coach at Cherry Hill High School West. Um, I have that kind of intensity in a sport that doesn't really require it. I coached football at Cherry Hill West on and off throughout my entire career, 32 years down there, and we had, you know, we never matched the degree of success that I had as a player. And one of the things that I was thinking to this morning when I was coming on, um, the fact that you two came from a place that had such success probably before you even realized how hard it was, and then the fact that you went throughout your entire career and you became even better coaches than you ever were, and I just found it remarkable that never once did you lament about not having the players that you used to have. You always coached the players that you did have. And whenever there was an instance, I mean, the best compliment I can give you two as coaches is that whenever there was a talent evenness or even superiority, so even, that last year at New Egypt, we had better players than most of the teams we played. Um, it wasn't even a fair fight, you know. And so the fact that you made those Allentown teams 500, that you're biting ankles with linemen that were 145 pounds, that's what I was the idiot who put too many miles on my car just trying to be associated with you guys. And so
Much appreciated. Much
yeah,
appreciated.
Of course.
and the thing about it is that you know the I have three children, just one son who played soccer, not football. But I think all the time about the way in which his best coaches coached him He liked to be coached hard. He liked to be held accountable. He liked to hold his teammates accountable. Those were all things that I saw on a regular basis from you guys. And so, yeah, I am completely unqualified to be in this space with you two geniuses. But I'm just thankful that you allowed me the little bit that I played in your careers, just connecting with you professionally, and then you became Uncle Greg to my children, and not a day goes by that I don't talk about Tommy in one way or the other. So yeah, I've lived a pretty full life, and my life is made infinitely better because of my relationship with you two fellas.
Well, just coach, appreciate that. I mean, there's a reason why you are our first guest. I mean, obviously that's how special you are to us as personally and as a colleague on the football field. I think for me personally, I'll take a minute and express, and I'm going to get emotional, of course, because that's what I do. Um, there's the reason why is because of who you are. You could obviously see it when you speak. I think you were a calming influence for me. I am not a rah-rah guy. I'm not someone that really shows my emotions on the football field. I'm always pretty calm and collected. And I think that voice from you was huge. Again, whenever we talked about coaching, we always said we got to get Coach Bova involved. You are a comfort. Well, you give obviously Coach Letson a comfort level. You guys think the same on the defensive side of the ball. You're looking at the same stuff. And for me, just your presence, not only the coaching aspect of it, but the personal relationship you and I have shared for so many years now, has grown exponentially. And it's awesome when we can get people like you and especially you part of it. And you know, we can talk all about the coaching and all this stuff, but when it comes down to it, it's about relationships and it's about people. I always try to surround myself, not people that have the same personality than me, because most people don't, as we know, but people that share the same values and the same
Yeah.
morals and the same way that we do things. And you obviously are the number one, you're number one when it comes to that. So we appreciate you being on. And if it's never been said before, I want to sincerely tell you now that we appreciate every minute that you busted your butt driving all over the place, not getting paid, not getting paid, but wanting to be part and help us succeed.
I
So,
got paid in experiences,
well,
sitting, at the College of New Jersey, being, 2-3 minutes away from a state championship. Like they could have had that in upstate New York. They could have
right.
had that, in a foreign country. I wouldn't have missed it. And the thing about it is with this series, when you're going to be talking to guys that, played for you, they saw the day to day in a way that I didn't. I
Mhm.
was fortunate enough, I wasn't in the blazing sun. I wasn't in the freezing cold. I wasn't up to my ankles in mud. I had a controlled environment in the press box. And so it was really, it's really something because I always felt as though that played to my strengths. I always felt as though I was better coach during the team periods than I was during indies,
Mhm.
and that was a pretty profound flaw. And when I saw how you guys coach on a day-to-day basis, in the summertime when I went there, you can't just put an X and an O. You have to teach a kid how to do it. You have to teach them how to execute a block. And your willingness to show them that was something I was always amazed at because I coached with some great coaches throughout my career, and they were infinitely better at that kind of technique and minutia and drills and all of those things. And I kind of like to, coordinate coverage to fronts. I like to enjoy, blitz pickup and things like that during the team periods. But the fact that you guys could see big picture and the minutia made it so much more successful than it otherwise would have been.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for that. I mean, to Greg's point, I don't know if you know how, I don't know if you know how valuable you are, to us. I mean, I'll just talk about myself. You know, I think it's, with obviously, football coaches and players listening to the podcast, they know the importance of someone up in the box, okay, and looking down and giving a perspective. And I think that generally, when people think that, they think more, at least at the high school level, they think more offensively. To help call offensive plays and to see how the defense is lining up and stuff, and less defensively. But defensively, it's so important, and I just feel that it's over the years. And listen, I'm not being critical of anyone. It just is what it is. Like it's hard to do that unless you really know what you're looking at defensively, because I don't just want the formation. Yeah, I want the formation. I want to know where the ball is, all that stuff. But I want to know how kids are doing after the snap. I want to focus in on somebody from up top. And a lot of guys just aren't able to train themselves that way. Listen, when I was up in the box as a young coach first, I couldn't either. You have to train yourself to ignore the play, okay, or see it in peripheral vision like you're driving, and focus on one person. So if a coach says, "Hey, see if this kid is standing up, or is he getting driven, or is that is the linebacker reacting, or whatever the case is," you got to focus on that, and it's hard to do. But with you, as to Greg's point, you just kind of knew how my brain worked and what I'm looking for. And it was just so invaluable. I mean, the one major experience that I had with you that sticks out was in the 2010 season, when we were having a difficult year, our second year at Colts Neck. As it turned out, as the year went on, we had a very, very good defense. Okay. And our offense was, picking it up as the year went on. We ended up, Greg, I think, being 2-8.
2-8.
And someone in the paper labeled us the best 2-8 team in the state.
Absolutely.
Okay? Because we took Freehold Borough, who won the Group 3 state title, to overtime.
Neptune.
Lost to them. We took Neptune, was a playoff team, to overtime.
Neptune won a state title that year.
Oh, they did?
Yep. And that was double overtime.
And that was double overtime. Crazy play that beat us.
Yep.
I don't even want to get into that. And RBC, we lost to them 14-7, another playoff team. So we were labeled that by a newspaper reporter. That was very gracious of them, but still we were 2-8. But in this particular game, it was a unique game for me because my father had passed the day before on Friday. Mm-hmm. And so it was an emotional pregame speech that I gave, and Coach Bova was present for that, Coach LaCava, of course. And, and I didn't know how we were going to do, but, we were playing Freehold Borough. They were very good. They were very fast. And they had a read option, type of offense. And we were going to play something very unique to that. Okay. We had figured out a way to play a 53, three deep coverage. And we were going to slant the field for all your football coaches out there. When the ball's on the hash, we were going to slant the crap out of the field. Okay. And we made this successful because of Tyler, our middle linebacker, was able, to stuff everything inside and be disciplined, when they did give the ball off inside. But anyway, the reason I bring it up with Coach Bova is because we took that game into overtime 7-7, and they scored on their first drive, and I got cold feet. Mm-hmm. I got cold feet with my game plan, and I remember talking to Coach Bova. I'm like, Bova, what do you think? Should I switch out of this? Should I switch out of this? And he talked sense into me, man. He grounded me. He goes, Coach, he goes, you got to let it. He goes, look, I don't know. They completed a lucky pass. A couple other things happened. He goes, I don't think that's indicative that they didn't prove that they can drive on you on this. This is a new look. He says, I would stay with it. We stayed with it and we stuffed them. They could not figure it out. And it brought us to overtime on the brink of winning the game. And Greg, I think, did we score first in that overtime?
We scored first, and I remember I want to just make some background information on this. That team, that 2-8 team, that was when we basically were playing sophomores all over the field. Okay, they were sophomores,
and seniors who bought in.
Right, and I want to make a point. You said Tyler, and I'm going to give his last name, and it's Tyler Van Wagner. And I was just talking to my wife about this the other day, and I said, the first year we were there, we had a lot of guys that didn't buy in. He was one of them. and he was a stud middle linebacker. He
Very
was
good.
tough as nails, stoic as heck, redheaded kid. Like he was built. He was a nice sized kid. And I remember his senior year when he was won over, he changed the entire
He did.
mentality of the program because the younger kids and his own teammates started following him. And then we had an extremely competitive 2-8 season. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but we had an extremely competitive 2-8 season playing in the B North that was loaded with speed.
Yeah.
And I can remember that game like it was yesterday. We were moving the ball over the field and we just couldn't put it away,
Yep.
but it was an intense game. And I remember that. I do remember that game.
Yeah, I mean, and that is just one instance, with Coach Bova,
Yeah.
And that's just what he provided to me, because like you said at the last podcast, like, a lot of people don't understand how I think defensively, and he does, so Coach Bova does. And I'll share another one about Coach Bova that kind of threw me a little bit, but Coach Bova is always so reserved up there. But, our last season, we were playing, I don't know, was it Park Ridge? Who was that? Who was the school in North Jersey?
Ridge.
What?
Ridge.
Ridge?
That was,
that was New Egypt. That was
That was
New
Yeah,
Egypt.
we were at New Egypt and we were
Right.
playing Ridge.
Yes,
and,
Ridge, blue and white.
the head coach was wearing something
Yep.
and acting in a certain way.
blue pants with a white belt. He looked like he was ready for a golf match.
And Coach Bova, I thought he was going to come down. I thought he was going to come down. He's like, can you believe this guy? He's like, and I tell you that.
And we won, and we beat them.
Won. Yeah, we ran away with that game. Initially, I didn't know what type of game that was going to be.
Listen, here's the deal. They had no idea down in that Burlington County League, and even them up in Hidden Ridge, which is North Bove. Is that North Jersey somewhere?
Yeah, way north. Yeah.
They have no idea how to play against the defenses you put together. They had no clue. And one of the things that I tell everyone that asks me to this day, I said, you're going to see stuff that you've never seen before, and you're going to be scratching your head. And most people are like, I'm not doing that. And I just go, it works.
It works.
It works.
We had a student teacher who coached at Mapleshade, and their upcoming opponent was Overbrook. And if you remember that was the year we lost 3-0.
3-0.
Yeah. We stopped them like 9 out of 10 times inside the 5. It was a clinic in goal line defense. And so he was a young guy, and he, for some reason we start talking. There's no reason for us to have a conversation about football, but we start talking, and he goes, "Whoa, you're at New Egypt?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Were you guys cutting?" I said, "Yeah, if you can't beat them, you cut them, and you just lay piles of humanity, and then you allow linebackers to go chase them." He goes, "I swear to God, I watched that film 100 times. He was like, you play goal line defense?" I said, "We play goal line defense whenever we have to."
Right.
Against whoever we have to.
Anywhere on the field.
Anywhere on the field. And, that stud tight end from RBC that ended up tackling our kid on the end was frustrated because he was getting cut and he was getting beaten up at the line of scrimmage.
And he was getting
jammed. Every single play, he had a hand in his throat. And so, and you talk about, coaches not being aware. We had teams that were throwing bubbles into jam coverage, and it was like a 6-yard loss every time, and they kept on doing it. And I was looking around, I was like, I don't understand, but that was a different mentality.
The coach from Holy Cross gave us something that we never had in our whole career, which was we had a kid who was jamming the receiver. They threw a receiver screen, and he picked off the ball.
Yeah.
We never had an outside linebacker pick off a ball that was thrown to on a receiver screen.
Right. Yeah. Well, listen, what happens, and I can speak from you guys are D guys, both you dabble in offense too, but majority defense. They don't know what you're doing. And that is a huge advantage when they have no idea. And they're just going to do what they always do.
Right.
And we
Right.
saw a lot of that when we were at New Egypt, that they were just going to do what they do because they had no answers to what you
Yeah.
were doing because they never saw it.
Right.
Let's use that as a segue into Coach Bova's playing days, because I want to hear from him at Middletown South. But
Mhm.
tell us about your experiences at Middletown South. You know, you came up, okay, like Coach LaCava, okay, when Coach Camaforo started to put in a certain culture that took off, okay, handed the baton off to Coach Andel and then Coach Generelli. And we ended up going to 5, state title games. Your junior class started off those state title games. So maybe you can just tell us what it was like, being at Middletown South and being a player there, and playing in those defenses we talked about, and what you brought along with you and the similarities that you saw with Coach LaCava and I in the future.
Well, this circles back to my playing experience with Greg. Like you said, we were not pals because he was a senior as a freshman. I remember that he used to wear a lot of pads. Like he was a very padded up guy, like a lot of elbow pads, a lot of pads, and he was an absolute stud. He could run faster than anybody. I think I'm taller than him, but he might as well have been 6'9". And as a captain of that team, he was part of the new wave. So he was a sophomore when my brother was a senior, I guess, when my brother was a captain. Real good player, a lot of good teammates, but they hadn't embraced. We talked about when a new regime
Yeah.
comes in and a cultural change. And one of the kind of profound cultural changes that happened at South, and actually you guys took with you for the rest of your careers, and it's something that I guess was unique. I didn't realize it, but my brother was brought up in a mentality where you just get picked on and you play JV, and then when you're a senior, you play. And there's something to be said about playing 18-year-old boys against 14-year-old boys, right? It's not, you'd rather have a senior laden team.
Yes.
Right.
But one of the things that happened is when Coach Camaforo came in, he brought a 2 platoon system, so
Mhm.
it gave more opportunities. There were 22 starting spots, which I think is really great. And I don't understand why more Group 4 and 5 schools don't do it. But he also said the best players will play.
Right.
And so I was, a junior high kid when Greg, was starting as a sophomore, and he didn't disrespect the guys that came before him, but he was essentially saying like, "Hey, listen, we're going to be writing a new chapter. We're instituting this new culture." And so we always think of leadership coming from senior captains, which, Greg certainly did, but just from an outside observer, and I was little kid with pimples and stuff, but Greg was a leader as a sophomore. He came in like, what do you mean I'm going to wait till my senior year to play? Right? Like he came in number one in the physical fitness tests. He got his equipment first, which was a big day, big
Yeah. I
That's a
moment of the
big
remember.
day,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so my experience was by the time I became a freshman, um, that culture had been immersed for
Right.
sure. And the professionalization of football, the idea that uh, when a kid can't read, you don't challenge his manhood and tell him to read harder. You teach him how to read.
Mhm.
And that old school mentality, and not to disparage the coaches that came before Coach come before, but I wasn't privy to it. The professionalism of saying, okay, if we're going to ask our kids to make a reach block on this play, we have to teach them how to make a reach block, right? And that kind of professionalism from the staff, even young coaches like you, Coach Letson, like the expectation was there wasn't going to be foul language. You weren't going to demean players. There
Right.
was no hazing tolerated, right? And
Yeah.
so that was the world in which I emerged.
Yeah.
And that was the world that you perpetuated at every stop that you went to.
Mhm.
Right? And it doesn't mean that there's a lack of intensity. And oftentimes when you're, in your previous episode, you were talking about changing culture. Sometimes your approach can seem aloof or somehow like this guy doesn't care because they equated what I would characterize as abuse with love.
Right.
But these coaches really seem to care because they said disparaging things about my sexuality, and you know what I mean. And when you came in, you didn't do that. You say,
Right.
"Hey, listen, this is what we expected you. This is how you have to do it." The game is played by intense people, but it has to be instructed in a very professional manner. And that's the thing that I really took. And so when I kind of backdoored myself into being captaincy, because I played with the greatest players around, and I was just a kid who loved to practice. I loved football. I had played with those guys my whole life. So unlike Coach LaCava, who was fairly new to football,
Yeah.
I started at 7 years old, second grade with those guys. And we had amazing coaches there. We had an old Korean war vet who was our trainer. Everybody called him Doc. He didn't go to medical school. He just put tape on every bump and bruise. The old adage was, if it's below your neck, you got tape on it. If it was above your neck, you took an aspirin. So there was that toughness,
Right.
which a lot of people don't equate your kind of approach to, because you don't use foul language and you don't raise your voice, but the game is played by violent men, right?
Mhm.
And so I got great coaching with that. I played with really phenomenal players. And so when we got to our freshman year, I thought freshman football was the most important thing in the world. uh, when I soon realized that it wasn't. But we got there, and our expectation is we'd gone 11-0 as eighth graders. All of us basically went to the same high school. We had gone 9-0 as freshmen, and I remember my sophomore year we went 5-3-1. And I was like, I don't understand this. I
Right.
haven't lost 3 games
Yeah.
total since I was in fifth grade. Like, what are we doing, right? And so that kind of mentality survived Coach Hermaforo to Coach Andel, who was a young guy in his first head coaching job, and he was just spectacular. Even though he was an offensive guy, he had the smarts to say, "Hey, listen, I have the brightest defense coordinator in history. I'm going to let him do his thing, just like you did, Greg." Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and so my experience at South was phenomenal. And as a captain, I was a really vocal because I played with so many amazing players, really great guys who just knew how to win, right? And we took to hard coaching, and we were cerebral. And the profound advantage of two-way football, which has kind of gone the way of the dinosaur, but two-platoon football, was the fact that I practiced my position every practice,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so I know that when you were at Colt Snack, you had offensive preference, defensive preference. You tried to maintain that,
Mhm.
but we had different buses. Coach Letson, whether or not it was phony or legitimate, had animosity towards the offensive coaches. You know what I mean? We wore different colored jerseys at practice. There was no pennies,
Right.
right? Our 2-minute drill on Wednesdays was live, and they would be fighting over the spot of the ball. Like, I loved everything about that. So my experience was one of just like absolute perfection. And then I kind of chased that dragon as a coach. And there were no circumstances in which I went as a coach week in and week out with a profound talent advantage over the opponents.
Mhm.
And the thing about it is that there are some coaches who just line up their players, and their Jim Joes are better than anybody's X's and O's. But the fact that you combine, that talent advantage, that cultivated football talent, um, with the schemes and the practice time or whatever, it was special. But then as I kind of went on, I realized that you have to fight for 500 seasons. You have to you have to fight to be competitive in the second half of games.
Yeah.
And you had to kind of reevaluate what winning and losing was. And so I coached under some phenomenal guys. One guy in particular who really brought respectability to the program. And so at our best, we were a 500 team, and people were like, "Oh, football, is not that good, whatever." But I saw how hard we had to work just to get there, and how worthy of recognition and praise those coaches were, those players were, and the fact that we were in games in the fourth quarter against teams that had, you know, 40 more kids than us,
Yeah.
was something that you guys went through in your careers,
Right.
which was fascinating. But then, as you guys went from place to place, I know that professionally, I was this close to actually joining you, Greg, at
Yeah.
Allentown.
Yep.
My thing was like, I just want to be a part of this because I know that it's being done the right way.
Hmm.
And your 2-8 seasons and your 8-2 seasons, you coached harder
Yeah.
in those sub 500 seasons, and the experience, because my point, like even as I'm coaching golf, is all right, what do I have to do to make this the most memorable experience for the kids? What
Hmm.
do I got to feed them? How do I have to gear them up? How do I have to treat them? What is our banquet going to look like? Right? Because my thing is that at the end of the day, none of these kids are going to go pro. Very few of them are even going to be playing in college, but they're going to have the very best high school experience because I felt as though I had to pay it forward because I had the best high school experience.
That's
And,
awesome.
and that's really how I looked at it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great overview, and thanks for the plugs that you gave me, and it was a pleasure coaching you and all the guys. They taught me so much, and although I was able to do some unique things, and I did, I was thinking outside the box, and I was, more towards the preparation part of the game. When I was young, and I prepared very well. But during the game, I had a harder time with adjustments, because you're just young. You don't have that
Right.
much experience. And that's what I got better at, And I think some of the guys that I talked to over the years from the early years, and I tell them, well, they give me some praise as a coach back then, and I appreciate it, and I was a pretty good coach. But I became a better coach, and I said I really understood what I was doing, and during the game to make certain adjustments, out of losing,
Right.
and being overwhelmed. And something that Coach LaCava and I learned, and I know I can speak from here. I know he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I know I'm not wrong. I think it took us a little time to understand that you can be a competitive program. Um, but for you to go, to the state final and win that thing, what South taught us is that you really have to have a guy.
Right.
Okay. You have to have a guy, at least one guy, that is maybe a D1 guy or close to it, somebody that can control a game, whether that be a quarterback, or running, a tailback, running back, or even a fullback for that
Mhm.
matter, but you have to have a guy. And that's something that we did learn, and we ended up getting that guy, and Anthony Gargiulo, a Colts neck, a guy that could be a game breaker, control the game, offensively, and to give an example of that and how hard it is to coach and why coaches, I mentioned this last time, why coaches really, you earn your paycheck and I always make the medical analogy, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like what if a doctor slacked off in your heart surgery? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, you're getting paid to do this in it's these young men's lives. So, you know, so if you're in the stands at Allentown, I remember we're playing Trenton Central and we couldn't compete with them. And so from the stands, it looks like you're doing something unsound. but actually on the field, we are doing a tremendous feat, although we're losing the game. So they run option, okay? Much better than us, okay? We have to have multiple guys on dive. The quarterback's a Division I athlete, multiple guys on the Division I athlete, and we have to chase the pitch, okay? So we don't have anyone on pitch. Why? Because we have to stop the first threat, which is the dive, the second threat, which is the quarterback, and the third threat, we're going to leave, okay? And we're going to tell them that's how you're going to win the game.
Right.
You're going to take the most risky part of that option, and you're going to put it in the air and pitch it. So they did. We made them, okay? They couldn't run where they wanted to, and their star quarterback got hammered. And why? There's not a lot of guys, if you have two guys on you, okay, I don't care how bad you are, that are going to get out of that, okay? You know? And so they caught on and they started pitching, and we couldn't get there. The safety could not get there. A hard job running that inside out and trying to get there. So it looked like they were easy touchdowns. They weren't easy touchdowns. Do you know what I mean? And if I set it up and played a shell, okay, we would have looked terrible. You know, they just would have run right up the middle, okay, just destroyed us. We would have made that quarterback look like, you know, Penn State, you know, would have come down to see him. But what did we do? Okay, you know, the crowd is seeing and kids are seeing, oh, we stuffed that. Oh, we tackled this quarterback. Oh, there's no one on the pitch, man, you know? And that's the difference. You know what I mean?
Let me jump in here, Tom, real quick. I don't mean to cut you off, but this goes along with what you said. And this was our years with some of these teams that we coached. We always had a lack of comparable talent.
Right.
Not only athletically, size-wise, numbers, our numbers were always lower. And I think we touched on this before, and we've spoken about this a gazillion times outside of, you know, just outside in the real world, how and my wife says this to me all the time, you got to do things out of inspiration or desperation. And I think that when we were coaching those teams early on, we were desperate, man. There were some things that I did offensively that I'm like, I would sit there for hours at home writing stuff up, trying to figure out there's no way we can do, you know, the normal stuff.
You ran Wildcat before anybody else ran Wildcat because you had to.
Because I had to, and we touched on this. And I say this, and I'm still going to say it. Someone needs to prove me wrong out there in the social media world.
You invented pistol.
I ran the quarterback before any freaking program did it.
You ran pistol. You ran pistol before the guy in Nevada ended up getting credit for it.
I did all that stuff, and that was out of desperation. And I think that early on, coming in from playing at South, and you know, I was fortunately to coach at a young age, and you know, be part of 2 state championship teams. We had that mentality: is this is what we're going to do, and it's going to work everywhere. But what I didn't realize, is that everywhere is not like everywhere else. Okay. And we had to start, and that was the most disheartening part about you being a young coach as a head coach, going to a program that really had no success. But our measure of success, and that's mostly from Tommy, changed. And so we always said, watching film in the past, we're like, these kids don't line up right. No one's running to the ball. Their shirts are untucked. Their socks are different colors. They're wearing things on their head sticking out of their helmets. We scrapped all that stuff, gone, and it never changed from day one. And you know, we did a lot of things out of desperation. A lot of my offensive stuff was done out of desperation, man.
But I want to say, Greg,
I'll tell you, just follow up with this point.
Sure.
There was a point in that first year, Colts Neck, and again, this will remain anonymous, that there was somebody on staff that said, like, hey, Greg, maybe we're spending too much time lining up for the anthem. Maybe the shirt tucks in isn't that important. And like, you never wavered.
Never.
You said, I will never coach another down if that's not important. If we're going to have mismatched socks, if we're going to have shirt tails untucked, I'm not going to coach. And one of the things about it is that it could have been very easily, you say, hey, listen, we're losing these close games. Maybe we need to do something else. The kids aren't buying in. And you're like, the kids are going to buy in or they're not going to play.
Right.
And to me, that was such a powerful moment for me because I saw that you were going to go down, with your boots on, and you were not going to change one little bit.
No.
And it paid off dividends when you won 9 games the next year.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's where we talked about that the kids from the two programs, really could talk about a lot of similarities, and have some laughs as well. And this is why, I mentioned in the last episode, coaches, if they check out during these critical times, if they're not doing well, like, to Greg's point, things that we had to do, it made you think out of the box. Like, in what universe, okay, do you come up with a plan, all right, to put in a secret offense to get your starters off the field to get
Rest.
water?
Yeah.
Okay,
Rest.
because they play offense, they play defense, and they play special teams, and
Right.
they're dead. So, we had this unit of kids that never stepped on the field,
Yeah.
practice snapping the ball and basically downing it or giving a dive.
Right.
And they would go in we would give up an entire
Series. Yeah.
okay, for the kids to get a break. And it was fun. And we asked the kids, like, what should we call this? And one of the kids said, what about the CIO?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the CIA secret, the CIO, the offense. And so, and this was the thinking out of the box,
Right.
and also a weapon that we took with us. We didn't use it as much when we had better teams, but something that Greg called puppy. Okay. And puppy was my baby, really. Okay, because field position, when you're not doing well and you can't, your offense is it gets stuffed a lot of times, 3 and outs. So the field position just kills you. So puppy was third down punt.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay, taking them off guard to change the field, and it always worked wonderfully. And we took that to Colts Neck,
Right.
and then we flip, and I want to throw out these guys. Like, think about Greg, the how we struggled, with those teams getting yards. And then, years later, okay, with Mike Campbell and Tim Vangelis, we're in a game against Middletown South. They ultimately lost in the state semifinals, where there was over 1,100 yards of offense.
Wild game.
Put on, and we had 600. I think they had 500, and they ended up beating us.
Yeah.
But just think about those two universes. But we brought, it's not like we brought everything that we were from Allentown,
Right.
to Colts
We never
Neck.
changed. But I think outside of what separated what I believe, we were able to take ego out of it, which enabled us to do a lot of these things that other coaches would never, ever think to do.
Yeah.
The CIO, for example, who would ever think
Right.
that we need a break? We're just gonna sacrifice this series of offense and we're gonna get off the field and whatever happens, happens. And when a lot of these kids, when you run into them and when you get messages like Bove sent to you, I've had several of those. Years after kids have graduated, I get this anonymous text or an email, and I'm like, oh my God, I did have an impact, because I never saw myself as an impact, like having impact like that. I did things one way. It was how I was going to do it. I didn't really care too much how the kids felt about it, but I knew in my heart, in my soul, that this is the way I'm going to do this, and no one is going to, knock me off that path. But I think ego, when you're a coach, you can have some ego. You have to. We're all competitive. But when it comes to, and this is what I say, when you're coaching high school kids, everything is different. We are there first and foremost, in my opinion, to be role models and teach kids how to be tough mentally, physically, emotionally, how to deal with failure, which we had to do often early on.
Yes.
And those kids remember that stuff.
Yeah.
I would argue that if you talk to ex-players, and I hope we get a lot of them to come on from all of the places we've been, they will talk more about not X's and O's, not game situations. They will talk about the culture that we created and the funny things that we did and the crazy things that we did that they thought was nuts. I think that to me is more impactful.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
For high school athletes.
Well, Abby can't wait to come on to.
I'm sure.
To get into all that.
My
Yeah.
thing was, the X's and O's are important to me, but you know how I am. You guys know how I am, but
Yeah.
I want a team that looks good, does what they're supposed to do. There's no one that stands out different from any other players, and that's why I insisted on all those things. The same socks. We're wearing the same socks, the same colored cleats. No one wears anything that makes them stand out.
Yeah.
I think that's gone now. I think that it's changed.
Sending players into the locker room, man, was
Yeah,
the
just
best.
sending kids off. They look at you like, what's wrong with what I'm wearing? I'm like, because you're not wearing that.
Right.
But I think I'm going to give myself a little bit of credit here, and I usually don't toot my own horn. But for me to have that fortitude to stay that way, no matter what, when we were getting our butts kicked, I mean, that says a lot, because I think, like you mentioned, a lot of coaches will check out at that point, and they'll say, this is not important anymore. We need to focus on, the X's and O's and
Yeah.
stuff. But to me, what made it so draining, for me emotionally and mentally, was that it was the entire program. I had to worry about everything that was going
Yes.
on, and I held standards that, I mean, they
Right.
probably are crazy now, but to me, they were the right thing to do at the right, at that
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
yeah.
he's talking about standards, and I'm like, before he takes the job, and I go to the school, and we're walking out to the field. He goes, let's go to the field, and so this is at Allentown, and
Mhm.
so we get on the field, and at the time there was a cornfield, okay, that was no joke, 10, 20 yards off one of the fences, and I look at this cornfield, I go, that's freaking awesome. I'm like, we're going to run out of the corn. Children of the Corn, Stephen King. This is what I said. This is how I'm planning, right?
My
I go,
God.
this is going to be great. He goes, we're not running out of the corn. He says, he goes, we're not running.
Listen, Bo, one of the funniest things about this, and I think because we didn't have, it was so difficult at Allentown those years we were there, that I forgot so much stuff. I think I blacked a lot of this stuff out.
Right.
And I remember even at Allentown, even at Colts Neck, I'll never forget this quote from you. We just beat Nottingham in the semis. And you came to me. I don't know if you said it right after the game or later on when we were golfing or something. He's like, we won a semifinal game, going to the state finals, and you had no emotion about it. None.
None.
But I was always taught from my father, who was, his emotions were always kept inside,
Mhm.
that when a man shows out of control emotions, he's out of control.
Right.
But a lot.
Your response when I said that, it was actually 2 minutes and 8 seconds away from winning a state championship. We're on the bus home. They have a catered party for us. It was supposed to be the celebration, and you were still pretty stoic. And you said to me, and it was really powerful. And you said, I refuse to put my mental health and well-being in the hands, first of all, of anybody else, let
Right.
alone 15, 16, 17-year-old boys.
Right.
And like, what a powerful message. It doesn't mean you don't care or whatever.
Right.
It's just my worth as a human being is not predicated upon you making that field goal
Right.
or executing that block.
Right.
I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to separate from the consequence of it. And that was pretty powerful, because I'm a pretty emotional guy,
Mhm.
and that really did because my students, at the end of the day, were teachers, and my students sometimes would just rile me up. And I always harken back to my well-being is not in anyone else's hands.
That's
Certainly not going to be in your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was way, of course, as when you coach, you want to win games, but I think early on, because we didn't have success, it brought out our belief in the fact that it's much more than just winning football
Of
games,
course.
and I think that's where there's a lot of disconnect between coaches, different kinds of coaches. And I don't think, I may be crazy, but I just don't think a lot of coaches do it or did it the way we did it. I think, our personalities are, we're not giving in to anybody, no matter what the odds are. I don't care what happens. We're not giving in.
Right.
And I think creating an identity we always created an identity in our programs. You know, at Allentown, we weren't, 4-6 was our best record. Yeah. Was it the best record in 40 years? Yeah, it was. But the wins and losses at that point really weren't that important. It was creating an identity, and no one ever saying, like, looking at us like we're like a laughing stock, because they were prior
Yeah.
to we got there.
Yes, and
And
one of the things that someone says, well, what's one of the best feelings you ever had in your coaching career? And and one of the best feelings I had, people really shocked by, but you will not be shocked by it. And that was, in 2001, okay, at Allentown, we had a pretty good team, but we were outmatched. And it was well known throughout the conference, many good teams, that you could not run inside against Allentown. Don't
right,
even try.
right.
Don't even try. They give up nothing. And that was a very prideful thing for us, because it was true. And what I said was true. Like, the freaking Giants can't run in here. We may be 2-8, okay, but let's go to the Giants camp, because they're not running freaking in A and B gap. Like, it's not happening. Like, they're going to win this game somewhere else. And that's one of my most prideful moments, actually.
Right.
Who are your mentors? How did you get to where you were? Because as far as I'm concerned, you guys are 1 in a million, I guess 2 in a million, because you guys mentored each other. And then 2, did you get frustrated that the other members of your staff didn't kind of hang on every word and try to promote that in their own programs? I would think that 2 of the finest coaches I've ever been around should have a coaching tree that, the size of a redwood.
For me personally, I just think that I was fortunate, okay, in time, I needed it very much, okay, to be in my high school program with my high school football coach, Nick Camerano. He only coached for 4 years, okay, and those head coach for 4 years, and and those were the 4 years that I was in high school, and he ran the program the way that Greg runs it. No cursing, extremely intense. He was a very philosophical guy, like the sun's going to rise tomorrow, and he really used a lot of motivational stuff with us. He wasn't as reserved as Greg, but he was an O guy. He was an offensive line coach, an offensive guy, so he wasn't a D guy. He was very intense, and I just learned that intensity from him. But it was a perfect storm, because I was just a raw human being, with no meaning in my life in regards to what I wanted to do, and that became all consuming to me, and he became my number one mentor. But it was from there, and Greg has a lot of Coach Camerano's qualities, and I think that Greg said this on the podcast last time. He says that he has 100% trust in me. And there's this thing, Coach Bova, when you just mentioned it, when Greg is there, the presence on the sideline, he's always so controlled, and he's always thinking, okay, I know he's looking at the defense, he's planning ahead, and he's thinking. And, it's such a comforting thought, when you see that, and how he's talking to the players calmly, okay? And even when he needs to get stern, he'll get stern, but his voice never gets loud, And I just think it's a very it's a very difficult thing to describe, the comfort level that you have with him there on that. He's a presence. He is not aware of this.
Yeah.
He's a presence on the sideline, and some of that presence has to do with his stature. He's very big guy. He's wide. You stick out that way. Your physique. But it exudes past that. And it's just this very this calming presence there of confidence, and self-assuredness, and and it rubs off on the players.
Yeah,
Like you bring that sense of calm to the players. Well, we talked about, you can't have 2 maniacs. I try to hit that nerve.
right.
Okay. And then they go to you and they're ready, okay, to go to work, as we used to call it. And I think, I mean, I don't know who coined that, Coach Bova at South. I don't know if it was, I just remember your team particularly. The kids used to say, maybe one of the coaches started it. I don't know if it's Coach Andel, but maybe Greg, maybe you remember this, but it was like, defense is fun, and offense is time to go to work. You know what I mean? Time to earn our money, but defense is fun. Like, like that's how players at South always saw it back then. But I was a little long-winded there, but that was my influence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with everything you say. And, my thing, I've been influenced by several different people, and my dad was number one. I mean, you want to talk about stoic, getting the job done, doing what you have to do, and his thing was there's a time for work and a time for play, and work always was first, and that's something I always share with my kids and I share with my players. There's a time for work, and then there's a time to have fun after that. And that's how I grew up. That's how I've held myself as a teacher and as a coach. I think Coach Camaforo, obviously number one, bringing what I thought at the time. And again, I was different. I wasn't a partier in high school. I was always working out with Kevin Kaufman, John Turner, Mike Citarella. We never hung out and went partying and drinking and smoke. We didn't do that. Our specific goal was we were going to freaking play football for Middletown South, and we're going to change the program. And I can remember moving into Middletown in December, Christmas Eve of 1983. Moved in, went to school. Kevin Kaufman he just moved in also. So we were two new kids. And I can remember that spring walking from Thompson High School to Middletown South every day after school to go work out at South. And that's what we did. And that was our goal. And, for my first year, it was Coach Mosca, who I loved. Coach Mosca was a different type of coach than Coach Camaforo. His players loved him. But I loved Coach Mosca. I mean, he was always good to talk to. But I think when Coach Camaforo came in with Coach Andel and his staff, the program went from a high school run program to a college run program.
Yes.
Right.
And that is something I always took with me. I remember having the Wagner Seahawks playbook when I was a senior, and it was everything we ran as I was a player.
Yep.
So those guys were first my influence, and Coach Andel was my position coach. And you want to talk about attention to detail as a running back. I mean, I learned things as a running back that I took with me as a running back coach, and I'll never remember him telling me. And I remember I started coaching at South at 19.
Right.
I was young. And I remember him telling me when he gave me the first opportunity to coach, when he was the head coach there, he said, your job is to make your position the best coached position on the field. And I took that with me and I ran with that, for my entire assistant coaching, career.
Right.
So, and then when he left and then passed it on to Coach Generelli, I learned offense from Coach Generelli. I was intimately involved with Coach Generelli. We were, attached at the hip. We lived together, so we always were talking. I was always emulating and, kept all his practice scripts, all his game plans, and I listened to everything he said. So those guys, first of all, it's my upbringing. Secondly, it's the personality I have. I'm not a rah-rah guy. I'm not a loud attention seeker. I was never that way. I'm still not that way today. So those guys really impacted me, X's and O's wise, and how you carry yourself as a coach. A lot of this was, the thing that makes Tommy and I work, and I think about this often. We are completely different personalities. And I said this last podcast, but we believe in the same thing. We believe in the right way to deal with, young adults, and especially in a coaching situation. We share the exact same belief. We go about it two different ways. Tommy is the king of motivational lines. I am not a great motivational speaker when it comes to, I hated pregame speeches because I don't have those. He's very creative. I'm not creative when it comes to those things. I'm creative X's and O's wise out of desperation. Many times it was out of desperation, but he brings that part of the puzzle that works. He brings those anecdotes and those metaphors and those life experiences and those lines he says that I'm just like, where does he come up with this stuff? Why can't I do it? And then I finally realized, you know what? I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
He's going to do it.
Right.
I'll be me, he'll be him. He's got free reign to do whatever he wants. Now, of course, there are occasions I had to be like, "You're out of your freaking mind. We're not doing that." Yes, but that's just the head
I,
coach. That's
right,
the
and
head coach part.
Right.
that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It's
So
like
here's the
you make the call.
ultimate compliment to Coach Letson that I share with coaches today. When it was time for defense, I would get my 5-gallon bucket, walk to the other side of the field, put it down, and sit down for the entire defensive practice. I didn't stick my nose in. I trusted him 100% because I know what he does. Although unorthodox to many other people, I know it works. And so our the way we bounced off each other just worked for us.
Well, and this put you in practice in a very unique position because I would lean on you, okay, to look at something,
right?
Or I would come over to you and say, I'm struggling with this, and you're watching this whole picture,
right?
And that was so helpful, you being able to do that. Or you would even, which I loved, you would insert yourself for a minute and say, hey, let me talk to you for a second. So helpful, but I want to, the players will remember this, but something that you said about you taught from your dad, work first and play second and all this. And these are the things that you forget, but, players will remember it. It's just hilarious now where, if offense in practice was dragging, okay, you would threaten them. And sometimes you followed through with, you're not playing defense until you get better on offense.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm tired of this. He goes, yeah, everybody's you're all happy and motivated.
Go play defense.
Go to defense, but then over here you're dragging. Okay. Yeah, it's different. It's different, but but you can't win games if you don't score, fellas. And so I find that hilarious, but you would do it pissed off. Like, all right. He goes, if I have to say this one more time, you're not playing defense until this gets done.
I remember that the 3 players, I won't name them, but I remember the 3 players. I said, you're no longer playing defense because you want to go play and have fun on defense. You just want to go run around and hit people, but you can't, that's not how we're going to do this. And I remember they couldn't play and they got, it clicked. They knew I was freaking serious. I wasn't budging. We're not doing this. You're not going to drag ass in practice, on offense and then go have fun on defense running around.
So other coaches motivate by saying, we'll end early. We'll get Mr. Softy. We'll give you off on Saturday. Tommy's defense was so enjoyable, and you were so attuned to what the kids wanted. You said, that which you want the most, I will take from you.
That's right.
You don't give me effort.
It is awesome. Listen, it is words I live by. Raising my
cancel
own,
Christmas.
Yeah, raising my own kids. I used to always say this. When they're young, you can you can put them in tell them you can't watch TV, you can't have this, take this away. When they get older, you got to take away stuff they want to do. And that is what I did there. I'm like, I'm taking defense away. My words are not working. Now I'm taking it away from you.
Now that we're talking about this, it was so much fun. It was so much fun because I never forget Greg getting so mad. I love coaching the scout team defense. Love it. I find players there and everything. So all of a sudden I'm coaching them up and we're stopping some plays and Greg will say, like, stop that. They're not going to do that.
They're not doing that in the game. Yeah.
They don't coach that way. He goes, I used to laugh and laugh and laugh. It was so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah, it was great.
But so the part 2 of my question was your relationship was so inseparable with each other. You didn't have this extraordinary entourage who hung on your every word. I'm a hanger on, right? You got a new job. Hey, can I go up there? Whatever. My thing is, why do you suppose younger coaches were either reluctant? Do you think you were intimidated? Like neither of you strike me as someone who is going to keep all these secrets. You're having a podcast to share with the world.
Right.
Why do you suppose that didn't happen on most of your staffs?
Tom, let me take this first. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's changed. I think by the 2000s, the 1990s, things changed. There were so many more distractions for younger players. A lot of players a lot of young coaches just want to get in it to win. That's
Right.
their most important thing. They want to win. They want to be part of a winning program. And, I think me as a head coach, I gave my assistant coaches a lot of autonomy.
Right.
I held them accountable. I'm not going to be up your butt. I'm not going to be watching everything you do. I hired you for a specific purpose. You need to do it. And one of the tests I use, I just think we were different. We were a different breed. You, Tommy, me. We had this burning desire to learn the game of football.
Right.
And through the successes and failures, we still wanted to learn. I think it's completely changed. I mean, I think that time frame from, when you were young playing, even you, Chris, and me, it's changed so much when we got into the late 1990s now it's completely different. But I can remember a lot of coaches, and I've told this story a million times. A lot of coaches, I never squashed anybody's idea. Here's how I challenged them. Someone would come to me an assistant coach would come to me with an idea, and I was happy about that. And here's what I would tell them. They'd be like, "Coach, you want to put this in?" I'm like, "Do you feel strongly about this?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, okay, well then you do it. You do it." And
Right.
then I found out how strongly if they were willing to go through that to put something in they felt strongly about.
Right.
And some people just faded away because they just wanted to say they wanted something. They weren't willing to implement and do the work that came with it. And some guys did. And when they did, I'm like, go ahead, it's your show. Go ahead. This
Gotcha.
this is your thing. You teach this. You explain this to the players.
Yeah.
I just think the world is completely different. It's
Yeah.
completely different now.
With me, it was interesting because, as you know, I never worked in the school that I coached at.
Okay.
So, I would get there very fast, and and then practice would be over, and I go home. So I really didn't get a chance to know the guys. It took me a while, and everybody kind of knows the way I coach at this point. You know what I mean? It's kind of like,
It's a Chinese fire drill,
well,
but
I
it
mean,
makes sense to you and the
yeah.
players.
I mean, the thing is that, like, not a lot of people can give me too much input. Like,
Right.
I need to ask for it.
Right.
Like, so people learn pretty quick not to approach me with something unless it's something where we can't figure out, But what I'll say is, I owe Greg, for this, is that, other than Coach Andel, obviously, who I was introduced my first year coaching and knew him forever and loved the guy, very comfortable around him, and he gets me too. Other than coaching with him, and he was a consistent guy that we coached with. Other coaches I kind of, they were good guys, but I really didn't get too close to them. But after, Greg had Coach Hope come into his circle and Coach Naz come into his circle, it took me a while, but then they also came into my circle.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like with Coach Hope, Coach Hope only, he was a secondary coach and he only knew one thing, which was, cover two, and I hate cover two, and so, to his, to praise him a little bit, he's a young guy and I came in, and he knew a little bit about me, whatever. And I'm sure I was a little bit overwhelming, but I trusted him, in his technical ability to coach the kids, the position. And I sold him on the value of cover three, and we became very multiple, and he became a better coach because of that. But also, like, and I think he will tell you this, he chose the starters. I didn't. You know what I mean? Like, he chose the starters in the secondary. I did not. For the most part. And so, he was active during the game in regards to coverages and stuff like that. So we talked a lot about coverage is a big deal, as we all know, in games. And so, so he molded to me and we had a relationship. And Coach Naz too, like, he didn't coach defense, but he's one of those guys. Initially, I wasn't really sure, but he really had a lot of respect for me. Very kind man, and very respectful to me. And he got in my circle too. And I have a lot of respect for him as a football guy. And I also got to throw out some respect to Derek Sininsky, who, was my linebacker coach early on at South when he was young, and went on to be a head coach and all this stuff. And when we offered him to come coach at Coach Neck, he was an ex-defensive coordinator, ex-head coach, and he just accepted that. He knows me, and he just accepted that role. He was an exceptional linebacker coach, which I really needed. And we would talk some strategy, but I game planned, and he knew that. He didn't try to get inside my head in regards to how it works defensively, because quite frankly, he has a different approach to how he runs his defense, which I would totally respect. But we worked well together on the staff. But I mean, I know I'm not the easiest to approach coaching wise, and not a lot of guys can do it, but I know the guys who can, and I enjoy their company. And so someone said, well, will you coach now? I'm not going to coach. I only coach in two scenarios. If you guys coach, or if one of our ex-players becomes a coach and asks me to coach, there's a possibility I might do that for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I have to share a quick little anecdote. When we had that COVID crazy season, I wasn't even allowed contact with the kids.
Yeah.
And so, I was up there, and I'm not going to keep his name anonymous on purpose because I never learned it. But there was another coach up top with me, and we were playing lights out, running hand back for days, jamming them, whatever. They started to make a little bit of comeback, but we dominated the game. And I was thrilled. I was really happy for everybody. And as things were getting tense, he was like freaking out, and he was screaming, and he was jumping up and down and whatever. And then, we win the game. We're breaking down the things as my responsibility. And he's like, we've never beaten Holy Cross. And I snarkily said, well, the grown-ups are here. Like,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
well, like if you saw that, like, it was such a coaching mismatch,
Right.
right? And they had big dudes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was such a coaching mismatch. And his thing was, his only experience was there. And then I was like, well, you have to understand, you got to get ready for this. If you're going to stick around, this is what's going to happen week in and week out. There's going to be a decided schematic advantage because we have these two guys on staff.
Well, to say something, I think Coach Letson, Coach Bova, and I can speak for all three of us. We were fortunate to start our careers at Middletown South at that exact moment.
Yes. Yep.
Because we only learned it one way. We only learned one way.
No. And, Coach Camaforo, I don't think I give him enough credit. I mean, he hired me, tremendous, competitive guy. He's so competitive. He 17 years older than me, and he wanted to kick my ass in basketball. And, but he's a perfect example. It's difficult for a D guy to be a head coach because he was so intense. But his inflexibility and rigidness in regards to, how he ran the program and how he dealt with players was very helpful to me, even though I didn't agree, as time went on, I wasn't that flexible and rigid as he was. But to start off my career, it was tremendous. And just his friendship, I'd never had a man that was that older than me give me such respect. That was the first time in my life, you know what I mean? Other than my dad or my high school football coaches, being an adult man at 23, 24, and him paying me such respect, all those guys, being older than me. And that was it was a great experience for me. So, yeah.
And, without a doubt. I mean, the responsibility that Coach Andel and then Coach Generelli gave me as an assistant coach, a position coach, like primary position coach.
Yeah.
It creates your character, man, as a young man.
Right.
I have one bone to pick with Coach Camaforo, though.
Okay.
And I'll never get over this. I remember summer going into my senior year, I begged him to let me play defense too, because I always played both sides of the ball, and he said no. I was fuming from that. I wanted to play defense so bad too, and he wouldn't let us do it. He wouldn't let me do it. It really annoyed me. That really annoyed me.
Well, and I learned a lot from him. He was only my coach for 2 years, and then I had Coach Andel. He had something in the hallways. He never liked his football players in the hallways. Right. And I always appreciated that, because he would always confront you. What are you doing in the hallway?
Yeah,
You don't
I
learn
did
anything
it.
in the hallway. Go to the bathroom during lunch or gym
Yeah.
class, right? And one of the things, so I thought, I remember hiding in senior row, trying to hide from him, whatever. And Coach Andel, who again was a first year coach, and he was everything to me. Um, he would ask about your day when he saw you in the hallway.
Hmm.
And it was I think they're both reasonable approaches,
Hmm.
but I decided that when I see my players in the hallway, I was going to say, hey, what'd you learn today? How's your day going? Whatever. And kids don't have to hide from me or duck behind lockers
Oh,
because of that one little thing. And I think there's value in getting your players out of the stinking hallway.
yeah.
But there was such a humanity to Coach Andel
Yeah.
that I would be remiss if I
Yeah.
didn't mention that anecdote.
Yeah. This was a great podcast. And, as we're sum it up, some closing remarks, Coach Bova, what do you think?
I wish you the best of luck on this thing. I listened to your first one, and I hate to be wrong, but I thought I was completely spot on when I was like, this podcast has an audience of one. I listened to every minute of it. I loved every second of it. But I was like, there's nobody else who could possibly be interested in dialogue between, this odd couple. And then when you shared that social media kind of feedback that you guys are getting from that opening episode, I realized just how incredibly wrong I was because I'm just one of a boatload of people who want to hear every word that you have to say and are just going to get a whole lot out of this. And so I wish you the best of luck with it. I enjoyed my time. I enjoy my time spending with you. Looking forward to that dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're my Annalise was disappointed because every time that she gets to see Uncle Greg, she has a boatload of stories to tell, and so I'm just gonna have to give them to her secondhand.
Yeah.
But
That's
yeah,
great.
I really I'm very very thankful that you two are in my life, and I really had a great time this morning.
Thank you, Coach Bova. I mean, we look forward to tell our audience here that the three of us are in a text chat during the major football games, and we look forward to that. I love the comments, and
Yeah, so in short, Greg doesn't like trick plays. You want to punt on third down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, snap the ball, let's go get him, right?
love
Lonesome
it.
end. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. But it was great having you on, and it was I'm very happy I got the chance to share that letter that
That's
you sent
touching.
me way back in 1990, right?
Yep.
1990, and it means a lot to me, and and your friendship has meant a lot to me, and I want to thank you for being here, Coach LaCava.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why you're the first guest, Chris, and this goes way beyond football. It transcends, so many different things. There's only one person I look forward to playing golf with. That's you. I I just like being around you, and I really, 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 if I never said this to you before, I appreciate all that driving and busting your ass you did, driving all over the world for us. Just doing it because of your love for the game and your love for us. And I
Yeah.
want you to know the love goes right back, man.
I
Yes,
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
absolutely. All right,
You,
so this concludes episode one, and it was my pleasure talking both to you today. And please, everybody, tune in, okay, for our next episode. And we hope to have this one uploaded shortly. Okay, so everyone have a great day. Thanks,
all right.
guys.
God bless, man.
All right, Bo. See you, buddy.
All right.